Brilliant. Thank you, Emma. Good morning. Great to be with you. And as Emma has introduced, I work at Urban Saints. I look after the additional needs ministry stuff there. I guess the main influence that has brought me to be here today and doing the stuff I do is that I am dad to James. And James is now 16 years old. I don't know where that's gone. James, when he was 2.5, was diagnosed as being autistic with some complex learning disabilities. And a couple of years ago, he added epilepsy to his list of diagnoses as well. And so our journey, the stuff we now do at Urban Saints, the stuff that we do at my home church down in Bournemouth, the stuff that we do in family is really influenced by our journey with James. And so there'll be maybe a story or two that we unpack over the next sort of 3/4 of an hour, and maybe one or two of those will be about James as well. But what we're going to be doing over this next sort of 45 minutes is just unpacking what it means for the work we're doing in our children's work, in our youth work, when we're working with children and young people with additional needs generally, but we're going to sort of focus a little bit on kids that are autistic this morning as well. We're going to do that with some stories. There's a little video clip in a moment from the National Autistic Society to share a little bit about what autism is. We're going to get you doing a little bit of work later on as well to come up with some strategies that can help a fictitious case study child as well. And then as we come into land at the end of that 3/4 of an hour, I think a couple of parents are going to come and join me here, and we'll just have a bit of a Q&A session as well. So that's our plan for the next sort of 3/4 of an hour or so. Does that sound okay? Brilliant, because the only other thing I've got with me is an all-day lock-in session on Levitical law in Hebrew. So we'll do this instead. Okay, let me tell you about Martin. For this, you've got to come with me in your imagination to my home church down in Bournemouth on a beautiful July summer's evening, a midweek summer's evening. And it's our club for our sort of 9 to 13-year-olds. And I'm stood on the door of our church, greeting the kids as they arrive, the young people as they arrive, saying hello to the adults that are bringing them with them. And a car draws up, and a mum and her boy get out that I've never seen before. Don't recognize them from church, never seen them in the community around. But as they're coming up the path towards me, there's such a powerful story that's coming with me that I can sense it. And when they arrive with me, Mum looks at me and she says, "This club that you run, is it just for church young people? Or is it for anybody from the area around here to come?" And I start explaining about how it's open to everybody and what the times are and the ages and all the information. But as I'm doing that, I can see that she's building herself up to something more. And suddenly out it comes, and she says, "Only Martin has autism. And we've tried to get him into other clubs, but they've always said no." And then she starts explaining the reasons and telling the stories of why these other clubs have said no. They've said no because they haven't got enough volunteers, or the volunteers didn't have training in how to look after kids with special educational needs. Or on one occasion, she was told that Martin would be a health and safety risk and therefore wouldn't be able to come to the club. And it breaks your heart, doesn't it? It breaks my heart. And my heart was breaking as this mum was sharing this story with me, and 90% of my attention was absolutely wrapped up in what this mum was saying. You might be wondering what the other 10% was doing. Well, the other 10% was being horribly distracted by the chaos that was going on in the room behind me. There were screams and shouts, there were kids climbing the walls, there was a fight breaking out, there was absolute mayhem going on in the room behind me, and I was wondering where the rest of the team were that were supposed to be organising some things to go on. And as I was sort of distracted on one scream by somebody behind me, Mum asked me the killer question. Mum looked at me and she said, "Will Martin be able to come here?" And as I was distracted by that scream behind me, I looked around and there were perhaps 2 or 3 or 4 other young people that we were journeying with at that time who all are autistic or have ADHD, or in one case both, which is an exciting cocktail for him and sometimes for us as well. A brilliant lad, and we're still very much in touch with him today. But I really sensed God whispering in my ear and saying, there's room for one more, you know. There's room for one more. And so I turned around to Martin and his mum, and I said, you know, we would love for Martin to be a part of our group. And as you can see, he'll fit right in. And she laughed. And as she laughed, a light just sort of filled her eyes and a weight lifted from her shoulders. Somebody had said yes after so many rejections for her son. And it shouldn't have been such a big deal, but it was. And it meant so much to her and to Martin, and they stayed, and Martin had a great time, and we continued to journey with him. But that importance of being able to say, yes, of course, we'll include your child in the stuff we're doing. It's so powerful. It's more than just saying yes and hello to that child. It's saying yes and hello to that whole family. Being able to journey with that family and to help and support that family, to be able to get alongside them and to pastorally care for them as well. And so in a moment, we're just going to look at a quick video now from the National Autistic Society about what autism is. But then we're going to unpack some of the ways that we can include everyone. And some of these things you're doing, and there'll be a reminder. For some of you, maybe this stuff will be new. And so we'll just unpack some of that and look at ways in which we can make sure that all children and young people are included in the stuff that we're doing. So before we do that, let's have a little look at a little video clip from the National Autistic Society about what is autism.
Do you know somebody with autism? Autism is much, much more common than most people think. About 1 in 100 people have autism. That's more than 700,000 in the UK alone. So chances are that someone you know, or work with, or love has the condition. What is autism? Autism is a lifelong developmental disability that affects how we communicate with and relate to others, and it affects how we make sense of the world around us. Lots of things that people take for granted, like body language and metaphors, can be confusing and alienating for us. Autism is a spectrum condition, so that whilst we all share certain difficulties, our autism will affect us in different ways. Some of us have been to university and hold down jobs, whilst others need a lifetime of specialist support. Asperger's syndrome is a form of autism. People with Asperger's syndrome are often of average or above average intelligence. They have fewer problems with speech, but may still have difficulties with understanding and processing language. What is autism like? For us, the world can be a confusing mass of people, events, and places. Sometimes we struggle to make sense of the world, and this can make us anxious. Every person with autism is different. That's what makes it so difficult to understand. But some of the characteristics that we have include a love of routines, sensory issues such as noises or smells or light, and having special interests. Some of us experience difficulties in understanding and relating to other people, and having a social life can be that much harder for us. For some of us, for example, going to a party can be really hard because we don't know what's going to happen or who will be there, and it often gets too noisy, which can be upsetting. Other people with autism have trouble reading facial expression, understanding jokes or sarcasm, or common phrases like break a leg. Even phrases people use every day like it's cool can be disorientating. You think they're asking you to turn the air conditioning off. Many people with autism don't look disabled. Parents of children with autism often say that people simply think their child is naughty, while we adults find that we are misunderstood. That is why it is called a hidden disability. What causes autism? The exact cause of autism is still being investigated, but research suggests that a combination of factors, genetic and environmental, may account for changes in brain development. Autism is not caused by a person's upbringing or their social circumstances. Is there a cure? There is no cure for autism, but there are interventions that enable learning and development which may be helpful. You can find out more by going to www.autism.org.uk/approaches. Diagnosis. If you or someone you know thinks they have autism, they can contact their GP, who can refer them to a specialist for diagnosis. So how can you help?
And that's the bit we're going to come on to next. Okay, so that's just given us a little glimpse into the world of autism, what it means for children and young people that we're working with that might be autistic. The sort of key thing to remember from what we just looked at in that video, though, is that every child, every young person is different. And so the way that autism might affect them will be different as well. And so different strategies will be needed to help each child, each young person, to be able to do well within the work that we're doing in our children's and youth work. But there are some things that can work across not just autistic children, but a wide range of different additional needs and disabilities. And we're just going to look at a few of those and then look at some more specific things to help autistic children as well. Probably the most important thing that any church can do to enable every child and young person with additional needs and disabilities to belong and to thrive is to have somebody that champions this within the church, somebody who's heading up the sort of inclusion area of the work here at church and making sure that that really thrives. Emma, I'm guessing that's probably you here. Kinda. Brilliant. Okay, that's great. And you know, so it's really important that you guys are doing this. And actually, there are several reasons why that's important. But the most important reason is that it makes sure that it gets the profile it needs within the church. Because there's always something going on. There's always something new. There's something else that you're having to be trained on. I saw that, you know, at the next meeting you've got some more safeguarding training, and that's really important. But that's just a different priority again. Hands up if you're just about fed up of GDPR training by now. Yeah, most of us have had more than enough of GDPR by now. And so having people that look after and champion inclusion stuff here is really, really important. But actually, it's something that we all need to champion. It's something that we all need to sort of have as a thing that we hold responsibility for, to make sure that everybody belongs, to make sure that we're looking out for each and every child that has additional needs or disabilities, and think about ways in which they can be included best. You know, think about that lad who's autistic who comes in on a Sunday morning with his family, right at the time where there's a big crowd of people arriving, and there's bright lights, and there's smells, and there's noise, and right from the moment that lad arrives at church, they're struggling to cope with all of the sort of sensory input that's going on. Now, maybe just looking creatively at how that family arrives at church. Is there a better time for them to come? Maybe a little earlier or a little later when they can not be met by that huge wall of people? Is there a place in church within, you know, where everybody else is meeting, but you know, some chairs that are reserved for them, so that there's always a consistent place to come to, a place where it's theirs, and where there's some resources that the children's workers left there for the lad to use. Just thinking about the way in which that arrival at church is such an important moment for that family. Or sometimes maybe thinking about a girl who's dyslexic. And loves the worship and really enjoys taking part in the worship. But you know, we do that thing, you might do it here. I know at my church, I'm always going on about it, a bit of a scratched record, about how our worship songs, we put the words in front of beautiful photos or videos. And it's great. They look wonderful on the screen. But for that girl with dyslexia, that means that all the words are just swimming in front of her eyes, and she can't follow the worship as effectively. So, you know, talking to our tech team and saying, is there a way that we could have another screen with just a blank background, a plain background, and a dyslexia-friendly font? That girl, and maybe others that have other visual impairments or other additional needs, can access the worship songs better. And sometimes it's even in the things that we say. I don't know about you, but certainly at my church, I'm regularly encouraged to stand up and worship, sometimes to jump up and worship, which which is great unless you can't. So for somebody who's got a physical disability, a mobility disability, that might not be possible. Or it might be possible for somebody to manage to stand for the 5 minutes, the 10 minutes, the 15 minutes, however long our period of worship might be. But that's them done for the rest of the day then. They're really struggling from that point on. And so it maybe is just about thinking about the things we say. And instead of saying, let's stand and worship, let's saying, we're going to worship now. You can stay seated or you can stand. God really doesn't mind. Because he doesn't. What he wants is our worship. What he doesn't want is us to be struggling and in pain as we do that. And so, Inclusion Champions, can look at that stuff, and we can all look at that stuff, and we can look at ways to help everybody to be included and everybody to belong. And then the thing that really can be a huge help to us as well, and I'm sure you guys are on this and are doing this with the adults that bring the children and young people along to your clubs, is to build that relationship with them, to understand what's going on in the rest of that child or young person's world, to recognize that we see them for a brief time each week on a Sunday morning or on a club night. But actually for the rest of that week, that child, that young person is at school or at home. And often there will be strategies, there will be things in place to support them in those other environments. And so building that relationship with parents, drawing that information in and using that within our work to know what tools and ideas and things are being used elsewhere, not only means that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but that child or young person is going to have continuity. They're going to recognize the support that's in place for them. They're going to say, hey, this is what we do at school. This is what we do at home. And here we are now doing that at church. And it can really make a big, big difference to the way in which that child or young person is able to settle and get into the session because there's that recognition there already. So often we get this wrong. I was at a church a while ago, and I was just visiting on Sunday morning to see what they did in their children's work and see if there were any ideas that might help them. And it just so happened that particular Sunday, a family arrived with their 10-year-old lad. We'll call him Timmy. And they brought Timmy into the children's work, and the adults then disappeared off into the main congregation. And there was no mention of any support needs that Timmy had, but it soon became quite clear that Timmy did need a bit of extra help. And it's never our job to diagnose kids. Unless we're medically qualified to do so and we're being asked to do so, it's never our job to say, oh yeah, that kid's obviously got autism or ADHD or whatever it might be. But sometimes we can recognize in a child or in a young person things that they're doing that remind us of other kids. And Timmy reminded me of James when James was that sort of age. And so we tried some things that helped James then, and sure enough, they helped Timmy too. And we'll look at a few of those as we go on in this session. And so by the end of the session, Timmy had a great time. And he'd really felt at home, and he belonged in the group. And his parents came to collect him, and as they did, the children's worker scooped Timmy up and took him across to reunite him with his parents. And her opening line, before anybody had a chance to do anything about it, her opening line was, "So Timmy's obviously got special needs, what are they?" And you could feel all the oxygen being sucked from the room as she said that. We've heard quite a bit about Donald Trump building walls. Well, these parents were building a wall between this children's worker and Timmy. And I have no idea whether they came back the following week. Maybe not. But wouldn't it have been better if that children's worker had said, yeah, we've loved having Timmy with us in the group this week. It's been really fun. And we do hope that you'll come along next week and bring him with you again, and that we can spend some more time with him. And if you do, it'd be great just to have a conversation about what are the things that Timmy really enjoys doing? What are his favourite things? Because maybe we can do some of that when he's with us next time. And if there's anything that he just needs a little bit of extra help with, we could chat about that too, so that if we end up doing some of that, then we'll know how to help him and how to support him. much more likely to get a positive response from the parents, isn't it? Now, I know that some of the groups here use one-page profiles. You might have seen some of these. Let me dish a few copies around, pass them around to the other tables so that everybody gets a look at some of these. But one-page profiles are a great tool to use. You can download them from the Chef Kids website. And there's lots of different styles of one-page profile out there. But they ask 3 really important questions. Firstly, what do you like and admire about me? It's a great starting point, isn't it? It's a great place to begin. Because so often when we're thinking about children or young people with additional needs, we don't mean to, but somehow subconsciously we can end up starting at a place of thinking, this is a problem that we need to solve. You know, this child's got autism or ADHD or whatever it might be. How can we help them to be included in the group? And it's a sort of problem-solving approach that we start with. Whereas, what do people like and admire about me? That's a much more positive start. What are the things that are really encouraging and that are great about that child? Recognizing them as a child of God, a unique, wonderful creation. Really important for us to start there. And then what makes me happy? Really important to know that, because we can use that to help them, to support them, to make sure that the things that we're doing are things that they enjoy, so that they will be able to engage with it, they'll be focused on it, they'll get some joy out of it, and they'll learn through that activity. And then how I want to be supported. A great way of understanding a bit more about the ways in which we can get alongside them and help them. Using one-page profiles with all the kids, with all the young people, is really recommended. Not just for children or young people with additional needs, but with everybody. So that you actually learn more about all the kids and young people you're working with. And it helps us to do what we do even better. Okay, some specific tools and tips that we can use to help us with working with kids, particularly with autism, although some of these will work with a wide range of other additional needs as well. Well, we've already talked a bit about relationship with parents and carers and drawing in the strategies that are being used elsewhere. As our relationship with those adults increases, we can start to talk about maybe if there's some sort of school support plan that's in place for their child. And drawing on that gives us even more information that can help us to support their child better in our children's work. And pulling it all together, we hopefully will have a chance just to, on your tables in a few moments, just have 5 minutes thinking about strategies that could help a fictitious case study child that I'll introduce to you in a moment. But building a strategy for each child so that you know how they need to be supported. What are the things that they enjoy doing? And how can you introduce all of that into the work you're doing? Having that written down somewhere so that it's actually available to all the team that are working with that child. Having that as a strategy that you can all understand and work to is really important. And working through that with parents or carers and perhaps with some of the young people, with them themselves to really make sure that that's a plan that works for everyone. And reviewing it every now and then so that you can make sure it's up to date as that child or young person develops. Have a calm or chill area, a chill space, a place where if it's getting a bit too much, if that child or young person is feeling overwhelmed, if they're really struggling to cope, that there's a space for them to be able to go and get a bit of peace and quiet. Maybe having some ear defenders around. Let me just take my box of ear defenders around and stick one on each table. Grab one from there. Thanks, Emma. Yeah. So have a look at the ear defenders. Have a play with those. I know you've got some here, but try them on. They're great to use and really easily accessible about £8 to £10 a pair from somewhere like Amazon. But just recognising, as the video told us, that loud noise can be really physically painful for a child who's autistic. And so having access to some ear defenders can make all the difference between them being able to cope and them really struggling and maybe having a meltdown just because of the overload of sensory input that's coming in. A simple pair of ear defenders can make a big difference. Sitting children or young people away from distractions can, where possible, be a good idea. Having a fiddles box. I think some of you use fiddle boxes. Hands up if you've got access to a fiddles box. Do something with a fiddles box. So let me pass my fiddles box round. Have a play with some of the things there. Make sure it gets round to all the tables. A fiddles box, as the name suggests, a box of things that you can fiddle with, things that you can squeeze and stretch and twist, and maybe something with a little bit of weight to it that can help with the sensory need there. Whenever I'm packing a load of stuff in my car to come and do a little talk like this, if I walk past James whilst I'm bringing things through to pack, he'll always reach out for my fiddles box and he'll want the Play-Doh that's in there. He'll always pick the Play-Doh. There's loads of stuff in there, but he always wants the Play-Doh. For him, just squeezing the Play-Doh is what he needs to be able to help regulate the sensory input, and it helps him to focus. And it helps him to concentrate. It helps him to be able to manage better whilst he's in the sessions at church and elsewhere as well. If you really want to understand the value of having a fiddles box, then maybe next time you have your children's meeting, get a few things together, get a fiddles box on the tables, and encourage everybody to take something from it and fiddle with it, because we're a people that fiddle. Even in the short time I've just been stood here looking out at all of you, I've seen people fiddling with their hair, or clicking a pen, or chewing something, or, we fiddle. That's what we do. And so children are the same, and giving them something that's safe, that they can use, that helps them to be able to focus and concentrate, can be really helpful. Having something for your next children's meeting will test that. And at the end of the session, you can find out and say, has it helped having the fiddles box there, having something that you could fiddle with whilst we've been running the session? And usually the answer to that will be yes. Allocating somebody to be a one-to-one helper. Is there anybody in the room this morning who's a one-to-one helper for a child or young person? Yeah, we've got one here. One at the back there. Few of you around the room, and it's a brilliant job. Really commend you for that love and care of being a one-to-one helper for a child or young person. It's such a wonderful role to have. Because working with children and young people with additional needs and supporting them and encouraging them, helping them to know what's happening now and what's coming next, helping to look out for if they're struggling and knowing what to do when that happens, really, really important. But sometimes we need to fish in a different pond to find people that can be one-to-one helpers. Let me just, it's great. You've got a huge group here, and it's absolutely terrific. But hands up if you have got far more team than you actually need. You've got a waiting list. If somebody comes and volunteers to be a part of your children's team, you say, well, actually, I'll put you on the waiting list. We might be able to involve you in a year or two's time. No. So hands up if you're always looking for more people to come and join the children's team or the youth team. Yeah, quite a few of you, hands up, nods. And here I am saying, go and get some more. But sometimes for this role, the way we ask can make a difference. I know I've made this mistake. Maybe you have too. I've stood in front of our church congregation and I've said, we need some more people to come and join our children's team. And before I've gone on to explain what a one-to-one helper is and how valuable that role is, I've noticed 3/4 of the congregation have switched off completely because they think, well, I'm not a children's worker. I don't stand around at the front, jumping around and leading games and songs and talks and all that sort of thing. That's not me. And so they've switched off. And they'll come back in for the next notice on the list, because that might be about cake. And so they'll switch back in then. But what we need are people who will be caring and show empathy and understanding, and be willing to just sit with a young person or a child and support them and care for them and help them to know what's happening and what they need to do and what's coming next. And it's a great role. Sometimes we need to shoulder tap people. Sometimes we need to find somebody that we know would be brilliant at this and go and tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, why don't you give this a try? Come along for a week and see what you think. And maybe we have to go and choose people and fish in a different pond for them. But it's a great role, and it makes such a difference for children and young people to have the help of a one-to-one helper. Good planning, really important, really helpful for children to know what is happening now and next. It takes away a lot of the anxiety and stress that they might otherwise have. I think some of you use one-page visual timetables. Let me hand an example of a visual timetable around. There's one on the screen. This is James's. And this is James's. James uses this himself. This is his tool to use. So he has hold of this. And when we get to church, it's got church at the top. He knows where church is. And he will move his picture down as we go through the different parts of the session. Now, sometimes when we get to church, he'll move his picture straight down to snack time. Because he likes snack time. We all like snack time, don't we? And we have to explain to him, no, it's actually circle time first and snack time later. But what this does is it helps him to know exactly where he is in the program. And so that fear of uncertainty, of not knowing what's going on, is taken away because he's got a resource that he can use. Pastoral care, really important. It's what we do, isn't it, as children's and youth workers. Absolutely vital that we build relationships with all the children and young people we're working with. But you'll remember from the video, it was saying that children, young people who are autistic can sometimes struggle with social interaction, with making friends. And so it's even more important that we go that extra mile to build relationship with them and to help them and support them and make sure that we're a friend for them when they're with us. Children with autism may need help with everyday activities. It could be that they need help if you're having food, or with toileting, or with changing, all sorts of practical things that might be necessary. So you need to work through that with the adults that bring that child or young person. Obviously work through that from a safeguarding point of view as well, if it involves taking them to the toilet or helping them to change. But those practical aspects are really important to understand, because if they're struggling in the session because they really need to go to the toilet and they may not be able to effectively communicate that, you need to understand how to help them to communicate that effectively and then be able to take them to do what they need to do. And then give them something to do. Help them to have some responsibility. Children with autism shouldn't be excluded from all opportunities to serve. They should be as encouraged to serve using the gifts and talents that they've got as anybody else. Some children with autism might be really good at tech, for example, getting them to help with the tech team, the AV desk, that kind of thing can be really good. Using what they enjoy doing to help them learn. Remember from the one-page profile, we were understanding what makes them happy, what do they like doing. And we can use that in creative ways to help them to learn when we're engaging with them in the sessions that we're running. So the picture you see up on the screen, the lad with the jigsaws, that's an old picture of James from quite a few years ago now. James loves jigsaws. He's brilliant at jigsaws. He can do 300, 400, 500 piece jigsaws upside down just from the shapes. It's just the way that his brain is wired. He's just really good at doing that. But we use jigsaws to help him to learn. This particular jigsaw he's doing is Mickey Mouse and Friends. We were talking about friendship. the importance of friendship, the value of friendship. Now, we could have sat James down with the rest of his group and started talking about that, and probably a minute later, James would have found it hard to remain engaged. But because he's doing something with his hands, something he enjoys doing, something that's themed around the topic that we're discussing, he's able to learn from it, and he's able to understand more about friendship from it. Now, it might not be jigsaws that are the things that the children you're working with enjoy. It might be Lego. Anybody want to hazard a guess as to what the, I'm not sure that, oh yeah, it is working, what the construction at the top there might be? Anybody know what that is? I heard somebody say temple. Yeah, it is indeed the Temple of Jerusalem, as constructed by a bunch of sort of 9, 10-year-old children with autism and ADHD. They were understanding and studying about the Temple of Jerusalem, and the best way for them to learn about it was to build it. And so they built it out of Lego. In their particular example, the high priest is played by Darth Vader. So a bit of creative license there, but and they continued the Star Wars theme a little bit in the diorama that we've got here. This you might just be able to make out as Abraham and Isaac on top of the mountain. You might just see there's a ram caught in the thicket at the back there. In this particular representation of Abraham and Isaac up the mountain, Isaac is played by Luke Skywalker, and Abraham by Mr. Wu. But but it worked for them, and they were able to understand the story. There's also the Brick Bibles. Let me pass a few of those around. Try and make sure that everybody gets to have a look at those around the tables as well. There's the Brick Bibles, again, bringing the Bible stories alive, using a very graphic and very easy to follow and understand version of the Bible. There's also the Brick Bible videos. Has anybody here used the Brick Bible videos? No? Oh, brilliant. You must go and find the Brick Bible videos. If you just search for Brick Bible videos or Lego Bible videos, you'll find them. There's YouTube channels that have these videos there as well. But be careful when you're looking at the Brick Bible videos, because, you know, we are aware that the Bible does contain sex and violence. You know, it's there. And some of the Brick Bible videos can be quite graphic in the way that they bring those particular stories to life. Legend goes of the pastor that was looking for an illustration for an all-age talk and found a Brick Bible video and thought, this is great, this is exactly what I need. He watched the sort of first half of it. It was about a 3-minute video. Watched the first half of it. Yeah, this is great. I'll play this on Sunday morning. Only watched the second half of it live with his congregation on the Sunday morning. And it ended with the story of, you might remember the story in the Old Testament of Jael with the tent peg and the hammer and the head and the brains and the gore. Yeah, I think some of the congregation are still in therapy to this day about that. But so watch them first before you watch them with the children. But most of them are brilliant and are available to use for all ages. So yeah, Lego can be great. Maybe, though, it's Minecraft that's the thing that the children or young people you're working with really enjoy. There's a Minecraft Bible. Let me set my Minecraft Bible off on its journey round over this way. And there's also a Minecraft YouTube channel. It's called Pixel Heart Bible. And Pixel Heart Bible, if you search for that in YouTube or just Google it, you'll find loads and loads of Bible stories that are told using Minecraft as a way of being able to get that story across. So using creative ways, things that the children enjoy doing to help them to learn.